Okay, Bez Hashem with Siyat Nishmai, and today's nugget will finish up the rest of the subject. So we mentioned earlier that originally Hashem had the plan was that Adam Rishon should overcome the Nisayan of the Eitz Hadas, had another 3 hours left to enjoy Gan Eden, and Gan Eden, we said, was this perfect world where ready cakes grew from trees. Chazal say everything was perfect. Nothing needed to be fixed. Nothing needed to be planted. Nothing needed to be done. It was this utopian society. There were malachim grilling steaks for him, Chazal say. And it was this perfect world. And all he had to do was hold himself back from that one Nisayin. And then he would have enjoyed 3 more hours of this world. And then eventually would have came Shabbos and would have gone to Olam Haba. Obviously, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew that Adam is not going to withstand it, and so it was just really a mashal, an outline for humanity to know what their mission is. And Hashem took that Nisayin, broke it up into many, many different pieces, and each one of us get one part of that to be misakin it, and eventually, once we are all misakin it, we are back to the level of Adam Rishon back in Gan Eden. As we've mentioned, the whole purpose of creation is that each of us should get schar, and the schar is so beyond anything we could possibly comprehend. It can't be explained or even comprehended in any fathomable way in this world. And that's why the Rambam says that there's no worse punishment than not waking up for Tchias HaMesim. The worst thing possible is not to enjoy schar. All the Gehenna, all the suffering in this world is child's play to missing out the ability to get schar. And obviously, we mentioned that the limits of giving the real schar in Olam Neshamas is number 1, the world continues, and the effect of every one of your deeds continues. Number 2 is it's really not fair to the guf. You're great that you're dead and your neshama is in Gan Eden and you're whatever, and Olam HaNeshamas, as we said correctly, correct terminology, and it's getting its schar, but the good guf did most of the work. And so, therefore, it's not enough Olam HaNeshamas. So, ideally, like we said, the way to be mesaken the chet of Adam Rishon, the way to fix the world, to bring Hashem's revelation to the whole entire world, where Hashem's glory could shine to the whole world, is a world where there's a Beis HaMikdash, as we mentioned, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sitting on his throne, and the Malachim have 6 wings, and that's why in the Beis HaMikdash we say Baruch Shem Kved Malchusay, which represents Le'elam Vad, which is each of those 6 words is connected one of their wings, because the Malachim have no task at all, because it's all directly Hashem in that world. And so in that world where we're in Eretz Yisrael and we have the Beis HaMikdash, it's super easy for us to fix the whole world. That being said, in order for there to be Bechira, and there should be a possibility of messing up, there had to be an equal taiva, which was the taiva of Avodah Zarah. And the taiva was so strong that even though Hashem's presence was so loud and the Nevi'im were there and the Shekhinah was everywhere, there was just tremendous taiva of Avodah Zarah. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw, and Anshe Knesset saw, that we cannot correct that mission, so the purpose of the second 2,000 years of the world was seen as it's not going to work out, so we're going to have to go to the next 2,000 years, as we said. That is to bring Moshiach from the darkness, where we go into absolute darkness. Hashem's presence is no longer there. So therefore the mitzvahs become so much greater. The averos become so much smaller, and every small deed we do acts so much. It's so much greater, means so much more. And so basically when Hashem saw that this was going to happen, oversimplification, Hashem gave us the second Beis HaMikdash period, which, as we heard from Rabbi Yehuda Miller, is that when they killed Avodah Zarah for the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah, one hair got caught, and that was the hair of Ruach HaKodesh that's going to last through the days, but it was strongest in the second Beis HaMikdash. We saw there was still the fire came down from Shemayim in the shape of a dog in the second Beis HaMikdash, not from Shemayim, whatever. But the point is there was still Shekhinah in the world, but that was not so much to fix the world as much as it was preparing us for the next 2,000 years, the 2,000 years of being able to fix the Nisayin in a world of Galus, and That's the world of Mashiach. As the Nevi'im describe greatly, in great detail, that there's really two possible ways of Mashiach coming. We'll go through the Psukim in Yecheskel, and first Zechariah coming up real soon, and then we'll see Yecheskel. And sometimes the Navi is described as coming as a poor man riding a donkey, and in Zechariah he's described as coming riding on a cloud and Shemayim coming down. In Yecheskel, I think the Navi describes Gog and Magog as one of the worst wars ever. And in Zechariah, and if I'm not mistaken, it's described as a very easy for Klal Yisrael. And you have this dichotomy of two ways of Mashiach coming. As the Gemara famously says, so Rav Levi says that it says in the pasuk in Yeshaya Hanavi that Hashem, that at the Hatzor Elef, I'm paraphrasing, that the small one will be for 1,000, and in that day Be'ita Yachishanu. We'll explain that a little bit, hopefully. When in its time I will hasten it. So the Gemara says there seems to be a contradiction. Does Mashiach have a deadline? Does he come in its time, or does Hashem hasten it? And the Gemara says that there are two possibilities. If we do tshuva and we collectively beat the system, meaning Hashem has a deadline where Mashiach is going to come, no matter what. If we beat that system even by 1 second, then the whole Geula comes on the way of Achishana, which is miraculous. Mashiach coming riding on a cloud. Gog and Magog is for all the enemies of Klal Yisrael, and Yidden do not suffer at all. On the flip side, if Chas V'Shalom, it comes in its deadline, then Gog and Magog is one of the scariest times in history. It's very challenging. Mashiach is ani rechav al chamar. We'll try to get to that a little bit. So what that all means. Okay, just to summarize, what we said up until this point is that these 2,000 years are the 2,000 years that we're supposed to bring Mashiach, meaning we need a Mashiach to reveal Hashem from the hidden world, where Hashem's not Beis Galus in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, but rather Hashem's hidden, and in that hiddenness, we need to fix the Chet and bring him back. And we said there's two possibilities. Either we earn it, or there's a deadline. And the obvious question is, how could there possibly be a deadline if we have to be Mesaken the Chet of Adam Rishon? Right, that's up to us. So the Gra explains that the pasuk is not really describing two different things. Obviously, the Gra says that we could bring Mashiach anytime we want if we all do tshuva. As the Gemara says that Ilu Yishmu Shtei Shabbosos, if all of Klal Yisrael keeps two Shabbos properly, Mashiach comes right away. And as Taisus asks, what does it mean? I thought all the neshamas shebeguf have to come out. So Taisus says that Anachanami, if all of Klal Yisrael does tshuva, then during that 1 week, all the amount of babies that are stuck in guf, in the place in Shemayim where all the neshamas are left, women will get pregnant with many, many children at one shot, as it was in Yetzias Mitzrayim, that Shisha B'Keres Echad, so whatever's left over in Guf, during that week, the women will get pregnant to bring those neshamas down. I digress. But anyways, yeah, so get ready. 6 at a shot. But the question is, how could it possibly come? See, obviously, if we all do tshuva, Mashiach could come early. But if we don't do tshuva, how could there be a deadline? So the Gra explains that Be'ita Yachishon is Hashem promising that in the time of Mashiach, it's going to be B'atzar Yila Elef, that Hashem's going to make the Nisyonis so big and so great that the smallest, teeniest mitzvah we're going to do is going to be so great in Shemayim that it'll automatically come in its deadline. But there's a flat deadline. Somewhere in these 2,000 years, there's a flat deadline of when Mashiach has to come. During these 2,000 years is the period of when we could bring Mashiach. Anytime during this deadline, these 2,000 years, there is a deadline, which we don't know when Mashiach comes. Ironically, the Gra himself, he writes on a sefer called Sefer Ditzniusa, and over there he says, if you understand what I'm writing over here, you'll understand, I'm mashbiya you b'shem Hashem, not to reveal when that is. But clearly the Gra implies to have known when the final deadline is. And he says you can figure it out by reading that text. Obviously, it's way above my pay grade, but it's just cool to see it. The Talmidim of the Gra said to Reb Chaim Kanievsky that when he was a child on the playground, that when he grows up, it's still within his lifetime, meaning about, in his old age. But, anyways, I digress. Okay, so we have a 2,000-year period where any time during that 2,000-year period we could bring Moshiach, but there's a final deadline that we don't know. That being said, there's a few things. There's a Ramban in Shir Hashirim that says Va'elef l'chashlemo masayim l'neitim esperioi, and the Ramban says that's a haftacha that Moshiach will come a bare minimum of 200 years before the year 6,000, which is like 14 years from today. The Zohar seems to maybe say even 210 years, which is 4 years from today. Yeah, and Chazal say it's Shemitah year, so there's very few amount of years left, according to these Mamari Chazal. And yes, the Rambam himself says not to try to figure out when the deadline is, but the Rambam himself in his Igeres Teiman tried to figure out, and all the Rishonim tried to figure it out. So there's still an Indian of trying to see and figure it out, even though the Gemara says not to and the Rambam says not to. Okay, anyways, okay. So we said that there's a personal mission for every single person, which is to be masakin themselves, their part of Adam Rishon, which is, and in order that they should get schar. And we said you can't get that schar fully in Olam Hanashamas because of the two problems. Your life goes on, and the second issue is that your body has to get rewarded. So therefore, there has to be some reward for the body. And so the idea is that we have to do all of our part and fix the world slowly until and then there's the global mission of fixing the whole Chet of Adam Rishon collectively as a society. And the Shvar Makdashim say that that's the mission of Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef's mission is to try to be masakin us as much as possible before the Geula. And there's going to be some form of salvation. Some form, it's going to say every tzaddik in every dar there's a Mashiach ben Yosef. The neshama of Yosef gets transferred over. But the point of Mashiach ben Yosef is to do everything possible to bring us back to as close as possible as the Geula. Be'itay Achishana, completely rectifying the sin of Adam Rishon collectively as a society. And so we, with that mission, first of all, Mashiach ben Yosef could be a group of people, doesn't need to be a specific person, but the mission has to be to eventually bring Klal Yisrael to the land of Eretz Yisrael, to bring Torah and mitzvahs into Eretz Yisrael, and to eventually have Torah and eventually bring karbonos and maybe build a Beis Hamikdash before Mashiach comes, all part of Mashiach ben Yosef. So who is Mashiach ben Yosef? So the Vilna Gaon, they say very much believe that he could be Mashiach ben Yosef. Maybe there's controversy about that, but for sure both the Vilna Gaon and the Baal Shem Tov at their period believe that they have to go to Eretz Yisrael, and by them going to Eretz Yisrael and starting that process, that is how the Geula is going to happen. And as a matter of fact, the Ritzbah says specifically that the way of the Geula is that there's going to be a few Yechidim here and a few Yechidim there that are eventually going to want to go to Eretz Yisrael, go to Eretz Yisrael, settle the land, plant the fruits of the land, build the land, and with that they're going to bring Moshiach. And to us, we always imagine the Beis Hamikdash coming down as fire. But the truth is that the Yerushalmi says that we are going to run out of patience and we're going to build a Beis Hamikdash even before Mashiach comes. The Radak in Tehillim on the pasuk Al Tiftachu B'Nadivim says that don't rely on people, rather rely on Hashem, and Hashem is going to bring the Yeshua through people, just as He did by the second Beis Hamikdash through Kirish. He allowed them to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. So too, Edom and the Ummah Olam are going to help us build the Beis Hamikdash, and we're going to even build the Beis Hamikdash. And the Ramban says that as well, and the Medrash says it. But the point is that Mashiach ben Yosef, whether he actually builds the Beis Hamikdash, like the Yerushalmi and the Rishonim, all that say that, or even if not, but the close of it is going to be the mission to bring in Klal Yisrael to do tshuva, to rectify the world, bring us back to Eretz Yisrael as close as possible to the actual Geula. And that is the job of Mashiach ben Yosef. The Medrash and the Gemara all say that eventually Mashiach ben Yosef gets killed. And that's described as perhaps Gog Magog, the final moment of Kreach HaToma trying to put up one last show, and the point is that basically we did our mission. We broke each part of Adam Rishon's Chet, and we fixed it each individually, and the world as a whole is now purified, but there's one last little step that we need to get to, and that's the Be'itei Achishan. In the final moment, we need to totally get purified. And at that moment, there's going to be a tremendous test of emunah. Will we stick to Hashem, or will we not stick to Hashem under that tremendous challenge? And there's even a medrash, Nistaris der B'Shimon, that describes it, that says that we're going to have like a story of Eliyahu Har Carmel. The medrash says that we're going to go up to Haba, and we're going to compete with the Muslims, and going to tell the Muslims that this is our mountain, we should bring Karbanis here. And the Muslims are going to say, no, this is our mountain, and Bnei Yishmael, it says in the medrash, that our mountain, and we get to bring the karbanis over here. So we're going to say, let's both build Mizbeach and see whose carbon is going to be accepted. And the Medrash says that the carbon of the Bnei Yishmael is going to be accepted, and that's going to empower them, and they're going to try to kick us out of the land, and half of the Yidden are going to run for their lives in terrible fear. And anybody who doesn't have full emunah at that moment will be completely broken. And immediately after we come over that last challenge, comes Moshiach ben David, and the real final Moshiach, and he brings us back to the land of Eretz Yisrael, and for sure, according to everybody at that point, builds the Beis HaMikdash, and that is the final Geula. The idea of Yemais HaMashiach is to have a utopian society where Klal Yisrael could live in Eretz Yisrael. What's the reason for Mashiach? What do we need Mashiach for? So the reason we need Moshiach is for a few reasons. HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't stand that we are suffering in this world. We can't stand that we're in pain that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Shekhinah, is hidden. He's in a chariot. He can't sit on his Kisei HaKavod. He can't rule over the world. So we want Malay Chalaris Kavod. The whole world should say, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Elam Vod. And that's the idea, is that we want Mashiach for Hashem's Kavod to be revealed to the whole world. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Lalam Lo Me'omaya. That's all of our tefillah, that the whole world should recognize Hashem's ruler of the whole world. But really, the purpose of Yemais HaMashiach is to give our bodies a schar. Again, and eventually, originally, it's the idea, the way the lesson explains, it's going to be a phase process. Slowly, the Yidden move to Eretz Yisrael. Eventually, the Yidden plant trees and plant the land and build the land, and then eventually, maybe even we build the Beis HaMikdash. Whether we build the Beis HaMikdash or not is different shitas, but we for sure get as close as ready to the Geula. There's this one huge test. After the test, originally, it would seem that perhaps Yemais HaMashiach, again, different opinions, either starts off as regular natural world, but eventually it comes to this utopian society where there's nothing we need to worry about. It brings us, once we're masakin the chet of Adam Rishon, we could go back to Adam Rishon and Gan Eden, and that world is a world where all our physical pleasures are taken care of. And what do we need that world? We need that world for two purposes. First of all, our guf should get schar for the effort that it did on this world. So your neshama gets some schar when the person's lifted, they go to Olam neshamas, but their body still needs to get schar. So we're going to live in this perfect world that we can enjoy any possible pleasure that we want. But last but not least, we're going to have a world that is gives us the ability to be masakin anything we wanted to do in this world, and the Satan didn't allow us. Somebody wanted to do a mitzvah, and he succumbed, and he couldn't, and he tried because of the tiredness of the world, the suffering, the pain he was going through. Hashem's giving us this one last chance to completely be masakin ourselves, and those are Yemais HaMashiach. Like I said, the world's going to start off in Yemais HaMashiach, pashas in a regular natural order, a regular natural world, and slowly transition as we purify ourselves to a higher and higher level, to eventually to a world where there's going to be Tchias HaMesim. The first Tchias HaMesim is going to be a special Tchias HaMesim for the Avis, the Zayin Royim, and eventually after that, there's going to be a Tchias HaMesim, a special Tchias HaMesim during Yemais HaMashiach for the Yidden who were Mitzapali Yeshua, the people who are Mitzapali Yeshua, the people look forward to the Geula, they're going to be Zeicha to an early bird special of Tchias HaMesim. We're going to go to this world of Yemais HaMashiach, where it's going to be a perfect world, but it's going to be on this world. And at some point it transitions perhaps, as the Chassam Sofer says, that once we're living in Eretz Yisrael and doing the world, the Torah and mitzvahs in a perfect way, there's somehow like a steps to go up to the Gan Eden Shamayla, which is, again, a physical world, but on a higher dimension than the current world. Again, it's a little bit above my pay grade. And in that world, the Rambam describes we live for 1,000 years, we live long lives, everything's perfect. First, like I mentioned, there's going to be Tchias HaMesim special for the people. It's Mitzapel Yeshua. And then there's going to be a Tchias HaMesim for every single Yid who didn't, not believe in the 13 Animamins, right? Anybody who's Zeicha for any Tchias HaMesim is going to be Zeicha to it and going to be able to get schar for their guf for the mitzvahs that they did. And it's going to be on this world, this utopian world. Eventually from there, now, how to reconcile that that's going to last for thousands of years, and then the world is Charav in the year 7,000. So obviously we don't know how to reconcile that. There are many different shittas, and I'm out of time, so I'm not going to go into it. But it would seem that somehow we could go to the world of Gan Eden, of Olam Haba, of Gan Eden in this world, or Gan Eden, on a higher dimension. But it's going to be the physical world that's perfected like Adam Rishon before the Chet, where once again from trees you're going to be able to pick your cakes and get steaks without any hard work. Everything's going to be done. There's no work going to be necessary. Just pure pleasure, and an ability to serve Hashem with your heart and be misak in the last parts of your neshama. That you weren't able to be misaken in the world that you were during Galus. Obviously, the amount of mitzvah counts in that world is significantly smaller than the amount of this tiniest mitzvah in this world where there's hester upon him. As the pasuk says, that these things are called Yom Shein Lam Chayfetz. Hashem has no desire for the world days of Moshiach, because those mitzvahs are barely mitzvahs and they don't really count, but a little bit somehow we're going to be able to purify ourselves. After that, and then this officially comes at the year 6,000, but how to reconcile that? You might say Mashiach, people live for thousands of years, and it would seem that the Melech HaMashiach's kingship lasts for a minimum of 3 generations, maybe even more. Again, how to reconcile those two things, I don't know. But eventually, as the Chazal say, at the year 6,000, the world is over. When the world is over, the world's going to be Charav for 1,000 years. Rambam says that even Charav can mean literal, so perhaps maybe we go to this Gan Eden and the planet gets somewhat destroyed, because Rambam says if it's completely wiped out, it's not Charav. Charav means that it exists, but it's in a lower state, right? So maybe the rest of the world gets Charav and we get to live in Gan Eden. I don't know that, but it's how to reconcile the two. Eventually it's going to be Vayivas Hashem Levade, it's only going to be Hashem. Then there's going to be the next Tchias HaMesim, which is Hashem is going to wake up. This is at the end of the year 7,000, or beginning, again, different shittas, that Hashem is going to wake up all the, any human being to have ever existed, and we're all going to line up into our own sections. And this is, during Yomi Mashiach, by the way, I left out, people are going to die. Maybe we'll have extra long lives and have everything going good, but people are going to die. It's going to be Olam the world's going to be in under a normal way. I mean, obviously, it's going to be an ideal and a utopia, but the world's going to continue. And Goyim are going to be able to, righteous Goyim are going to exist in that world for sure. But then eventually, there's going to be a like I said, everybody's going to die, and after everybody dies, there's going to be a Tchias HaMesim. Again, so we had the early birth Tchias HaMesim for the Yisrael Yeshua, Tchias HaMesim for all the Yidden during the period of Yomi Mashiach, and then we have the day of Misa. Everybody wakes up at the end of 7,000 or at the end of 6,000, and when there's going to be a huge Din Torah of Yom HaGadol VaNeiro, and this is what Shmuel was so scared that Shaul woke him up. He thought he was getting up for that Yom HaGadol, and during that time that Hashem's going to judge every human being to have existed, and being that this is the end of the world, literally, I mean, again, the Rambam says the world continues forever, but all Rishonim do not go with the Rambam, and this is going to be the end of the world. And as it's the end of the world, Hashem is going to judge every single person, not for what they did, but all the outcomes that they did, every person that they inspired, every act of kindness, how it affected the next guy. Right? You give a guy a few words of chizuk, and then that person can have a healthy marriage and live a whole life. And the opposite, you insult somebody, you hurt somebody's feelings, you crush them, and they don't have half their life. So there's din v'cheshbon for everything. And the Gemara brings over there that all the nations are going to come and they're going to ask to have their chelik. And the only way to get into Olam Haba is with the schus of Torah. I mean, obviously everything else matters, but without schus of Torah, there's no even an entrance ticket to Olam Haba. And that's the famous Gemara that Hashem is going to turn to the nations, and he's going to say, Rome, you built these, Britain, Rome's going to say, we built these bridges and these bathhouses, and we did it all for the sake of Torah, because they want to get into Olam Haba. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to say, fools, you did it for yourselves. Obviously, the chutzpah to stand in front of Hashem and say that we did it for Torah, and the answer is, the Swarm says that HaKadosh, when they see the world for its truth, they're going to realize retroactively they thought they were building a stadium for sports. Meanwhile, the reason that they built a stadium is that there should be a place for the Siyam HaShas. That's why Hashem arranged it. And they're going to see it crystal clear. So they're going to say, hey, Hashem, we built the MetLife to be able to have a Siyam HaShas. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to say, no. That's not what your intention was. And what I care about was what's your intention. And that famous Gemara says that Iran is going to say, all the wars that we did it only for the sake of Torah. And obviously it's going to be the same conversation where they see that their Melchamis is what causes Klal Yisrael to do tshuva, as we see. And that's what they're going to say, we should get our chelik. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to say again, you did it for your own reasons. And Shaitam Shabbalim, yeah. And that's the whole thing. And there's going to be a tremendous Yom Hadin. And after the Yom Hadin, all the Rishayim are going to be punished and go to Gehenna again, Pashas, to suffer, to get all their punishments that they deserve, equal punishment for everything that they did to Klal Yisrael. And for Klal Yisrael is going to be shaking in the pants, terrifiedly scared. But the Gemara says that ultimately, we are Zeicha, they're going to beg for one last chance. Hashem gives them the mitzvah of Sukkah. They kick the Sukkahs, as we all know. And they're not Zeicha, and that's it. That's the end of the day. There's a huge Yom Hadin, and that's over. And then comes Olam Haba. So what is Olam Haba? So again, one thing we know is that after we go through the Yemos HaMashiach and we've been through Gehenna and we went through the Yom Hadin, we're going to have purified ourselves completely to the highest level to be able to be Nehenna Miziv Ashkino. And so what is Olam Haba? I don't know, but I could tell you as follows. I can tell you that the Rambam says that there's no tsar and there's no suffering. It's the whole thing is kulei tov. The whole thing is kulei pleasure. And says the Chafetz Chaim that there's Ramach Evarim in a person in Shesagidim. There's 248 limbs in a person's body and 365 tendons. And when we do, and there's 365 lice essays and 248 essays, and every time we do one mitzvah, we're perfecting that part of our body for Olam Haba. And says the Chafetz Chaim that when after this great Yom Haggadah V'Hanoro, there's going to be another Tchias HaMesim where we're going to have, again, we had the neshama get some schar in the Olam HaNeshamas. The guf is going to get its schar in Yemos HaMashiach, and now the guf is going to be purified to the level of even greater than Adam Arishan in Gan Eden. Adam Arishan in Gan Eden, his body was made out of out of light, but this is going to be after he was already masukin, he already fixed himself. So we're going to have bodies, but our bodies are going to be kuli ruchni, greater than malachim. It's going to be physical, spiritual combined, whatever that means, and it's going to be made out of the mitzvahs that we did. And we're going to live in this world forever and ever and ever, and the only thing we're going to be doing is getting schar from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I don't know how to reconcile that statement with the statement of Chazal and the Chafetz Chaim that says that although the whole thing is going to be kulei tov and zero bad, and the whole thing's going to be good, nevertheless it's going to be the Chafetz Chaim, and the Gemara really says it's going to be a world of shame, and the shame is going to be that, let's say we do 243 mitzvahs, and we don't do 5 mitzvahs that correspond, let's say, to the 5 fingers. So in that world of Kulei Olam Haba, we're not going to have the 5 fingers. Says the Chafetz Chaim that that's the idea of somebody who doesn't keep Shabbos doesn't get Olam Haba. He says it's not a punishment. He says the body is going to be created out of the mitzvahs that we perform in this world, and how we perform it is how perfect that part of the body is going to be. The heart is Shabbos, so a person who doesn't keep Shabbos is just Hashem's going to do tchiyat to his body, but there's not going to be a heart, so there's not going to be able to be in existence. Now, the Gemara does say that there are those that don't get Olam Haba. And then the Gemara afterwards says that at the end of the day, every single Yid gets Olam Haba. Even the ones that the Mishnah specifically says they don't get Olam Haba, they do get Olam Haba. So obviously there's different levels of Olam Haba. And you also see the Gemara says that the greatest tzaddikim were concerned maybe they weren't going to get Olam Haba. And that's obviously a special Olam Haba that comes from going through Midas Adin that only special tzaddikim get. And obviously to them, our Olam Haba doesn't even count. But nevertheless, and to the people who don't get Olam Haba, they're going to get Olam Haba. But it's going to be like to ours, that's going to be like as if it doesn't count. And we're going to be Zeicha forever and ever. And the Chafetz Chaim explains that that's what the pasuk says. Seif davar hakol nishmas alikim tiro ki ze kol ha'adam. At the this is the end of Keheles. The Chafetz Chaim says everything is going to be heard at the end of days because this is the person keep Hashem's mitzvahs and fear Him. So what's the flow of the pasuk? Says the Chafetz Chaim. Everybody eventually is going to see which mitzvahs he kept and which mitzvahs he didn't keep because it's going to affect your body. Everybody's going to see it. Your grandfathers, your great-grandfathers. Because you're making the Adam out of it. And that's going to be scarred forever and ever and ever. Now, we're going to, Bez Hashem, I left out, and maybe I'll mention now for 2 seconds, where is the Sudas Halavyas and the Shara Bar? What is that? So, Pashtus and most Rishonim, that is a delicacy that we get to enjoy in the world of Gan Eden after Yemei Moshiach. When we elevate to the realm of Gan Eden that Adam Rishon started off in, Pashtus, at least what I've seen. That being said, the Vilna Gaon famously says that all those things, the Sudas Halavyas and the Shar Habar, the Yain HaMeshumer, are really euphemisms or mashalim for Chachmas HaTorah, that instead of eating food, we're going to live in the world of Gan Eden, and that's really an Olam Haba, and that's a schar that goes on and on and on forever and ever. We become one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we become one with Havai, we get to enjoy that pleasure forever and ever, and learn Chachmas HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're going to be shared the secrets, the deepest secrets of the Torah, and that is the pleasure, and the food that we're eating is really Mashalom for the Chachmas HaTorah. Anyways, have an amazing day. Thank you so much for listening. Sorry, I'm way over time.